when you talk about Family Feud, sometimes it's not just one family against another family. It's somebody who's dragged into both families because they have a foot in each other's camp. And so we're about to put Chris Mannix on the spot here from Sports Illustrated. Chris Mannix here on the program. Hey. I don't know if you're aware, but this show versus the Dan Patrick Show.
I read something about
Family
that.
Feud. You've been around us enough now.
I am, yeah.
And you've been around the Dan Patrick Show since Jump, pretty much, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Do you have a handicap on who do you think would be better equipped to win Family Feud? A tale of the tape, to use maybe your DAZN boxing acumen
that's
here?
a good one. I think there's a lot of matchups that I would consider a wash. I think the one outlier might be Fritzy, who has an absurd amount of institutional stupid knowledge, right? Like there's a lot of things that could be asked on Family Feud. Plus, he tends to take things, which could be good or bad, tends to take things a little bit sexual at times.
Oh, and so that might fit some of the...
It might fit some of the criteria for the questions.
Ooh,
okay.
Interesting.
All right. So you're saying his creepiness might come in handy, is what you're saying.
It might come in handy in a situation like this.
All right.
You know?
Okay, so Fritz is the one we need to look out for?
If the Dan Patrick Show comes out on top, my guess is that's because Fritzy has an absurd amount of knowledge of one particular subject.
Where we would look at him like, what's your malfunction? But in the world of Family Feud, it's a top answer on the board.
Like, you'd be struggling with the you'd nail the bottom answers, then Fritzy would roll in with, like, brimming with confidence that his top three would work, and they will.
But this is a man who once upon a time brimmed with confidence that his stand-up routine would crush, and we all saw what happened there.
He's brimmed with confidence about a lot of things that his professional career
That's what I'm saying.
May not have.
It can backfire when you're saying
that's what I'm
saying.
That's why he's the outlier. He's the wild card. Like, it could go all the way in the positive direction and all the way in a negative.
Would you say Dan and I are a wash?
I think you're close to a wash. You both have been in the game for a long time.
Okay.
I'm not as familiar with your guys and their knowledge. Like, if you ask, like, you know, if one of the categories is best use of maple syrup, like, Paulie's probably going to be pretty good at that.
All right.
You know, absurd things to do with soccer, Seton would be.
Well, Seton is already, by the way, our radio audience just returned. Chris Mannix of Sports Illustrated is here breaking down us versus the Dan Patrick Show and Family Feud. Seton is already verbally mentioned on the Dan Patrick Show, on Peacock, which you can see here on Roku, that he's nervous. He's scared.
He's nervous.
Yes. Which we can use to our advantage.
Yeah. I mean,
certainly if we send Del Tufo out there with him. Del Tufo versus Seton.
I mean, I think Seton's wheelhouse is a very narrow lane, right? Like, it's
got to be top 5 answers on the board. Here's your question. What's great about soccer? Music. That's true, too. That's why we send you out there, too. You know?
Yeah, he's good.
Although I think TJ versus Seton, I think that might be the way to go.
Yeah, if one of those categories, though, is like, you know, best things to do in Vermont.
We'd have to lean on your. We'd have to lean on your New England.
I've been gone a long time too, but it's okay.
Okay, you don't shine shoes no more. No.
By the way, can I tell you about just the most absurd scene coming in here was, like, you just had Cedric the Entertainer, Anthony Anderson, big fan of both those guys.
Cool.
They're pulling out in their black Lincoln SUVs. They've got a whole bunch of staff around them. Yeah. At the same time, I'm pulling in my mother-in-law's borrowed hatchback. Because while your producer Liz is like waving me off, like, wait for these guys to go, and then you can putter on in there in the Subaru hatchback.
Hey, man, you be you, man.
We can take some Arby's to go with you if you want.
Yeah, they have them.
Take some Arby's.
Please, they just left some food. It's
appreciate it.
I'm glad that you got you cross paths. That's funny. All right, so let's just jump into that. Curry's out for game 2. Any sense already what the Warriors' expectation of his absence might be?
Not the Warriors' expectation yet. I was talking to a few team trainers over the last couple of days about, you know, degrees of strain, trying to get a bit of an education on what hamstring strains mean. And the grade 1 strain, it generally means at least a week. It probably means closer to 10 to 14 days. This is the first time that Steph Curry has had to deal with a muscular type of injury. He's had kind of hand injuries and different knee injuries in the past, but he's never had an injury like this. So we don't know how his body is going to respond. And I'm sure he's going to do everything humanly possible to shorten that up. But this is one of those injuries, Rich, where if you don't get it right the first time, it's going to come back. You know, ask anybody that's ever had a hamstring injury. If you if you're not ready to run at full speed. And Steph Curry moves as much as any player in NBA history. Like, he is constantly
without the ball.
That's what I'm saying. Without the ball, he is constantly in motion. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be real tricky to see him coming back before the tail end of the series at the earliest.
Or if they're fortunate enough to advance, the Western Conference Finals, right? Because hamstrings. If you come back too soon, then suddenly you're out for more than just the foreseeable future. What do you think is the plan to make up for it? Who's going to be playing? Does Kuminga now get actually more minutes?
Kuminga is such a wild card in all this, right? Like, when everybody's healthy, he's not in the rotation.
Correct. When
somebody goes out, whether it's Jimmy Butler or now Steph Curry, he often finds himself back in the rotation, back playing heavy minutes. Kuminga is a huge talent. Like, we've seen him over the last couple of years be this versatile scorer, multi-levels, can defend a little bit, block shots at the rim. He's going to have to be huge. I love Jimmy Butler. I think he's a great player, but I don't think he can strap this team on his back and carry them the way that he did the Miami Heat during their final runs. Draymond Green, we know what his limitations are. This is going to have to be a series, I think, where Jonathan Kuminga and maybe to a lesser extent Brandon Podziemski steps up and plays a huge role and puts up numbers that are outsized what they usually do.
And Buddy Hield's just got to keep making threes.
Making threes. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't.
Right.
But look, if you're at the Timberwolves, all of a sudden your defense can get that much better because you spent most of it keying on Steph Curry.
Right.
Now that you can kind of spread the defensive wealth, so to speak, you're going to have a better chance of defending. But that's a weird, like, Anthony Edwards. You hear what Chris Finch said after the game last night? Basically, Anthony Edwards got to bring some energy, got to bring some effort. For 2 straight games, Anthony Edwards has stunk, right? They advanced against the Lakers, not because of Anthony Edwards. He was, I think the last 2 games, he's 12 of 41, 1 of 16 from 3-point range. Like, he was dreadful against the Lakers. He was dreadful last night in game 1. This guy's got to step up and play a bigger role. He is being branded, rightfully so, as one of the next faces of the NBA. Mm-hmm. He has not been good for the last couple of games for the Timberwolves.
So there's so many different ways to go. So I'll just go, since you just opened up the Lakers door here, I'm going to walk through it. We know why the Lakers lost to the Timberwolves, and you just pointed out that Anthony Edwards wasn't the main reason why the final game as to why they lost. The reason why the Lakers lost in that final game is Rudy Gobert looked like Wilt Gobert is how they were referring to him on Inside the NBA, with tongue firmly planted in cheek to light the fire underneath Shaq. No rim protector, which was and 3-point defense or good shooting, consistent shooting, which was the question when they had the no-brainer trade for Luka. When all the pieces settled, just like, okay, which is why they reached out for Mark Williams, didn't get him. Mm-hmm. What do the Lakers do from here? What happens now?
I don't think they'll reconstitute the Mark Williams deal, but they will use the assets that they were going to put in that deal, specifically Dalton Knecht and the first-round pick that they have to trade. You saw Dalton Knecht fall out of the rotation.
He also fell down, was sliding downstairs or something like that?
Yeah. I mean,
he's out 2 to 4 or whatever. Which is, by the way, if you're trying to trade him around the draft, he better. He better, fog up a mirror, right?
There's value in Dalton Knecht. I mean,
I'm not saying there's no value, but if the guy might be an injured asset, it's going to be tough to trade him.
Yeah, I mean, I think long term though, you'll be okay with that one. I think they'll try to put those pieces back together and acquire somebody. The question is, like, who better than Mark Williams is going to be available? And you survey the landscape; it's not a great trade landscape for players. I mean, you're not going to go get Derek Lively out of Dallas or Gafford out of Dallas. They're still trying to win something in the Western Conference. But there's no question that priority number 1 for Rob Pelinka has to be finding that kind of pogo stick of a center that has been proven to thrive opposite Luka Doncic. They need more than that. To your point about the 3-point defense, like, they've got to get another playable 3-and-D wing. Dorian Finney-Smith is one of those guys. He proved playable for them. I don't know that Jared Vanderbilt is playable in the playoffs because of his offensive limitations. Knecht, I don't think, is ever going to be an elite or at least an average defensive player, or at least above average defensive player. So they've got to find one of those guys quickly. Those are the 2 pieces they've got to find if they're going to have any chance of competing in the next couple of years.
What do the Clippers do from here, man?
I don't know, man. Like, that's a team that's landlocked. Like they.
What do you mean?
I mean, with terms of their roster, right? There's not a lot they can do. They don't have the draft capital to make a substantial deal. They're kind of against a rock and a hard place with James Harden, who can opt out of his contract, and he will probably be looking for a bigger deal. What do you do if you're the Clippers? Like James Harden, the book has kind of been written on James Harden. I mean, he is a guy that has proven to be a great regular season player who in the postseason has been dreadful. You look at the last 2 Game 7s that he played in with Philadelphia against Boston 2 years ago and this year against Denver. Awful performances, no-show performances. His numbers in the playoffs across the board are bad. Like, I don't know what you do there. Like, you don't really have much of a choice but to bring him back because you can't replace him with somebody else. So short of a full reboot, that includes trading Kawhi Leonard, who still has value even at, 33 years old. You're talking about bringing Kawhi back, bringing Harden back for his age 36 season. Zubac made huge strides this year. He'll be back. Norm Powell, he'll be back, maybe looking for another contract. Look, this was the year that, like, this year hurts probably more than most for the Clippers. Previous years, you can be like, oh, man, Kawhi was out, Paul George was out, somebody was out, somebody was injured, and that's why we lost. You can't say that. You can't say it. Like, everybody was basically there for this Clippers team, and they still lost in the first round. They're in a tough spot right now in the conference for what they can do.
So trading Kawhi is really on the table?
I don't know if it's on the table. I don't think Steve Ballmer wants to do that. I mean, Steve Ballmer's invested $2 billion in that arena, which is the best arena in the NBA, I think, unquestionably.
Well, and the playoff version of it was a lot louder than the regular season version of it.
Yeah,
and it was significant.
It was significant, but the Wall is a great idea.
Sure.
Like, I mean, it's a great arena. Top to bottom, it's a great arena. I don't think Steve Ballmer wants to go through a rebuild, not with Kawhi still playing at a high level, but you can't expect Kawhi. Like, with Kawhi, they were on like a 58-win pace last year. So, like, you can spin the scenario where it's like Kawhi comes back, he's fully healthy this offseason, he's training, he gives you 70 games next year, and you go into the playoffs next year as a top 2 seed as opposed to the 5 seed in the matchup like you got with Denver. But, like, expecting Kawhi to do that, I don't know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That's, to me, is what I'm looking at the Clippers. Like, are you really expecting something different from Kawhi in terms of his health and James Harden in terms of his postseason performance? If you are, I think you're wrong.
What do the Bucks do now? Just check in with Giannis every day? Heat check? Hopefully not Miami heat check, but, like, what do we do here?
I tell you, this is interesting because, to my knowledge, there have been no substantive conversations between the Bucks and Giannis about the future. The dust is still settling on all this, and they want to, rightfully, they want to give time for temperatures to cool. But it just seems like we're heading towards an obvious parting of the ways for a couple of reasons. One, Giannis is never going to be more valuable to all the other 29 teams because he's got 2 guaranteed years left on his contract, so it opens it up to everybody. You're not just a team like if you're a small market team, you're not acquiring this guy afraid that he might say, I'm not signing an extension. I'm going to go play for the Knicks or the Lakers. So you've got a window here, and if you're the Bucks, you've got teams out there potentially that could make you these massive offers. This is where the Bucks and John Horst, I think, need to be aware. You've got to be able to smell desperation. Right? Like in the last 10 years, there have been a couple of scenarios where teams have smelled desperation and hit home runs. The Boston Celtics, when they smelled desperation on the Brooklyn Nets and traded away Paul Pierce and KG and got all that package back in return. And the Oklahoma City Thunder, when they smelled desperation on the Clippers and got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and 407 first-round draft picks. I think there could be the same whiff of desperation off a couple of teams this year. I think Houston, number one, is a team that, saw what they were with this group. That's what they wanted to do. That whole collect data, figure out what they look like. I think they realized Jalen Green, probably not the guy that can lead them to a championship. They've got Jalen Green and they've got all of Phoenix's draft capital for the next couple of years, which is going to be really valuable. That's one team. Oklahoma City, right now down 0-1. Long way to go in that series. But if they bow out in the second round for the second year in a row, they may start to get a little bit desperate because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is young, but he's not that young. Lou Dort is young, but he's not that young. They're not a whole bunch of 21-year-olds like that have a long runway. They're a team with its star in his prime, coming off a probable MVP season. They're a team that could make a huge offer. And if I'm Milwaukee and I can choose between offers of Jalen Green and a bunch of good draft picks and maybe all the draft picks that Oklahoma City has to offer, and Jalen Williams, who I think could be James Harden 2.0. Like, I think if you give Jalen Williams room to blossom, he could be a superstar in this league. I think he has that much talent. If you have an opportunity to pit two teams against each other in a bidding war for your star to get the rebuilding package that those other teams I mentioned got, I think it's malpractice not to aggressively go out there and do it.
So when you say Giannis has never been more attractive to all 29 teams, you're saying the Bucks won't just call one team and say we're thinking of trading him and just to you? Like
I feel confident, Rich, saying that John Horst and that front office will not have a secret dialogue with Sam Presti in Oklahoma City to get a deal done.
So you can do it.
I do. Okay. I think it's
got it. All right. Chris Mannix is Sports Illustrated here on the Rich Eisen Show. So you know the Celtics inside and out as well. What do you think Joe Mazzulla was thinking? Fewer threes or just keep hoisting them? We're not going to miss 45 of them again.
I promise you, knowing Joe Mazzulla, at no point in time did he think that team should stop shooting threes, ever. Like, ever since the Ime Udoka year, and I've been in Boston doing TV, everything for that team for a long time. Ever since the Ime Udoka year, they've had this philosophy that there just aren't enough threes you could possibly take. Now, Joe has taken that philosophy, injected it with steroids and turned it into a whole different thing. Like, Joe's the guy that, remember the preseason opener when they were overseas, they shot 63s against Denver. Like, this has been his mindset the entirety of his coaching career. And to be fair to Joe, it wasn't like they were missing a ton of contested threes. They missed a lot of open threes. Now, you can nitpick here, and I think he said that in the post-game press conference where, 5 or 10 of them, you could say, all right, maybe go to the basket here, maybe don't pass up on a layup and kick it out for an open three there. But they're not watching the tape back of that game thinking like we took some bad shots. They're walking the tape back of that game saying we missed some open shots. So I would not expect the Celtics to come out in game 2 and become like a mid-30s three-point shooting team that's posting up Al Horford, for multiple possessions. They're going to be gunning away because they can go back to the season opener, Rich. And all those shots that they missed against the Knicks in game 1, they made them all in the season opener. They ran the Knicks off the floor in that game. So their mindset is threes. Their philosophy is threes. They're going to come out and they're going to jack up a lot of threes.
And they're defending champs, so going into Madison Square Garden is not going to have them knocking their knees.
No, they're 4-0 against the Knicks in the regular season. 2 of those wins have come by 20-plus points. 3 of them have come by double digits. I tell you, there is some room for concern with Boston. Like, this Porzingis illness, I don't know what it is, right? He cost him 8 games in March. It was connected, as according to the Celtics, to his latest absence from the second half of game 1. I don't know what to expect from him on a nightly basis. And last year against the Eastern Conference, Porzingis was kind of a luxury. They didn't need him to go whatever they did, 12-2 against the Eastern Conference. This year they need him because you don't want to play Luke Cornett extended minutes. Sam Hauser, before he got hurt, was not really helping them all that much.
Right.
You need him there. And Jaylen Brown, his numbers are still pretty good, but you watch Jaylen Brown and the explosiveness that you're used to seeing isn't there. He's got a real knee injury, an obvious knee injury. Whether it's pain tolerance or if there's something that could get worse, I don't know, but he's got a problem that is making him a little bit of a lesser player than what he was last year. So there's definitely, you can't just say, the Celtics can brush this one off. They're going to win 4 straight. I would still favor them to win this series, but there is legitimate roster concern, I think, with Boston.
And then lastly, let's talk about the Nuggets before I let you go on with your Wednesday here, Chris Mannix, because Michael Malone, in part, let go, shockingly, towards the end of the regular season at the very last minute, pretty much, because apparently he was playing Russell Westbrook too much. And look who's balling out, right? And being played appropriate minutes and given all this time now in Russell Westbrook, and look where they are. I'm just wondering also if you wouldn't mind interpreting for me just how emotive Jokic has been in huddles in ways that I really haven't seen And I'm wondering where this is coming from and what the undercurrent may be. Does it have to do with the interim coach? Does it have to do with everything I've just set up? What do you got for me there?
I don't think it had. I mean, I think it's a little bit of everything, right? Like, you do have a coach in David Adelman who is young, new to all this. But at the same time, David Adelman has been there every step of the way. He was there as part of the coaching staff for the championship season. But I think having a young coach there, I think probably brings a little bit more out of Jokic. I think the fact that the margin for error for Denver this year is much slimmer than it was in its championship year. They were a deeper team when they won a title a few years ago. So I think Jokic has perhaps a greater sense of urgency when he's looking at this team, that every game matters, every game counts. Look, they almost lost that series against the Clippers. I remember I was at Game 3 when the Clippers basically ran them off the floor,
right?
And I'm watching Aaron Gordon, who's all banged up. Michael Porter Jr. is dealing some stuff. The margin for error for this team is really slim, and I think that plays into Jokic being more demonstrative in those huddles. But the Westbrook thing is it's funny, man. I was kind of rooting for Houston to win their series just because we maybe could have completed the Russell Westbrook revenge tour, like for the number of teams that he's played on. Clippers, Thunder, perhaps the Rockets.
I know somebody was saying that the other day. Like, well, I mean, he's played on so many teams. Like, you could fill an entire playoff, bracket with the teams that he's played for or against or with or all of that stuff. But it's just, be careful what you wish for when you think the Nuggets are less than. Right, like you got a champion here having now home court advantage in that series. You've got the Knicks with home court advantage against the Celtics right now. You have major home court advantage for Indianapolis. You've got the Warriors, banged up as they are, having home court advantage in that series now. Fascinating way that the second round has started. Before I let you go, the usual drill here where I'll ask you something, and if you're right, you're a genius, and we'll bring it back. If you're wrong, this never happened.
Tape's gone.
Okay, yeah, sort of mission impossible. It will self-destruct. The NBA Finals are going to be who against whom?
I'm still going to go chalk. I'm going to go Boston, Oklahoma City. I think the Celtics recover in this round, and as impressive as Indiana has been, and these Tyrese Halliburton games are awesome. I would favor the Celtics over the Pacers as well. I still like Oklahoma City's chances, maybe more so now with the Steph Curry injury. I thought Golden State would be a tougher out for them in a conference finals than Minnesota would be. What I've flipped on would be my championship pick, because what I was saying about Boston, if they get these guys back, it doesn't worry me in the conference playoffs. It does worry me against a team like Oklahoma City. I know Oklahoma City built their team in the Celtics image. Chet Holmgren is Kristaps Porzingis. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is Jason Tatum. Like, these bunch of long, versatile, defensive-minded guys.
Right.
I think Oklahoma City's length and depth and defensive acumen, I would favor them now over Boston, which I wouldn't have said at the start of the playoffs.
All right, and then just full circle, who do you favor in the Family Feud? Who do you favor? I know you were talking about it's all about the matchups. I know that's something that's passable when you're talking about the NBA or boxing.
Yeah.
But for this, you got to make it. You got to call it. And don't worry if you're going to insult us in front of us.
No, I'm not
going
to, because Rich, as you know, I'm a West Coast guy now, so I'm a Rich Eisen guy now. So I am.
Great answer.
Take that, Dan.
Great answer.
Take that, DP.
Take that for data right there. Yeah.
You went fist.
Take that for data.
And we have that, actually. Who knew that we actually had
Chris,
that?
just quick, 1 minute on Canelo, Bud Crawford coming up in the fall.
I was in Saudi Arabia for that debacle last week where Canelo became undisputed again. And a lot of people looked at that fight saying that is an example of why Terrence Crawford will now beat Canelo Alvarez. I'm still not sure I buy that. I always believe a great big man will beat a great little man. And Terrence Crawford is effectively going up 3 weight classes to fight Canelo Alvarez. That very rarely works out. I think for a Crawford fight, it should be back in Vegas, which won't be at 6 o'clock in the morning local time. That's when the fight happened in Riyadh, 6 a.m. local time, which was a wild experience to say the least. I think he'll be ready to go. I think Canelo is too big, too strong. And I think even at 34 years old, at this stage, I still think he's got an edge over Bud. So I would take Canelo.
Okay. And the winner takes on Jake Paul or Tyson?
Canelo Alvarez will fight Jake Paul before his career is over.
Ladies and gentlemen,
a take.
Called it. And again, if you're right, you're a genius. If not, it's never existed.
We never saw this.
Never
Erased
had
from
it.
YouTube.
Everybody check out everything that Chris Mannix does, DAZN for boxing, Sports Illustrated, and everything else.
I'll go back
on
in
the
the hatchback
podcast.
now, if you
There he
don't
goes.
mind.
Going to go back in his mother-in-law's hatchback, and that's not a metaphor for anything. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.